welcome to another episode of The Hard Sell, the show where the stick rattles back, and to another iteration of
Have a Break.
And today we're going over the border with a commercial break from Scottish television. These adverts took place during the Once and Future STV's coverage of the Scottish Cup final in 1989, 20th of May for what it's worth. That year's final was also an old firm derby, i.e. Celtic versus Rangers, during one of the more bad-tempered periods in the history of the two clubs' rivalry, and that's saying something. Rangers went into the game having won just about everything else in the Scottish game, but it was Celtic who came out on top here by a single goal in the first half, preventing Rangers from taking a clean sweep in what was actually Celtic's centenary year. Don't read too much into the fact that I'm wearing a Celtic strip. I had a Catholic grandmother. Anyway, the adverts are from shortly after the end of the game. You'd expect the audience right now to consist of a few drunk Glaswegians and the old impatient student waiting for chain letters to come on. Well, you must note this one.
No one knows what's going on.
Directed by David Bailey and starring Paula Hamilton, the model who looked about as much like Diana as it was possible to look without actually dying in a pile-up.
And everybody changes places.
Famously, this advert was hailed as a breakthrough for feminism in the advertising industry. Although in reality it's just the flip side of the usual patronising coin. Then again, this is advertising, that's pretty much the best anyone could have hoped for anyway. Patronisation is their business. The trick is to make the viewer not notice.
But the world still carries on.
Given Bailey's work with lynx, now known as Respect for Animals, I have to assume that's a faux fur coat.
Love must always change to sorrow, and everyone must play the game.
Alan Bryce on the soundtrack, starting out as an impression of Neil Innes, and then transitioning into Chas and Dave.
It's here today and gone tomorrow, but the world goes on the same.
Dance. Coca-Cola command you.
Can't beat it. The feeling you get from a Coca-Cola. Can't beat the real thing.
Yes, it's one of those none more 80s adverts for the brown stuff, featuring another fucking bloody air ballad, and lots of backlit young models gyrating in clubs, or the gym, or a meadow, or at one point on the floor of the stock exchange.
It's coming your way. Check these feet and you're gonna say, hey.
I always found these things vaguely dystopian, even when I didn't know the word dystopian. It's a sort of mirror effect. The utterly artificial utopianism of the adverts, which show real people, locations and objects, but then arrange them in a way completely alien to anything you might actually see in the real world, throws the horrible dystopia of the real world into sharp relief. Of course, its powers may have been blunted in this particular ITV region because Iron Brew had already given them a thorough Scottish dressing down with their satirical campaign as seen in the soft drinks episode.
Gosh, you know it's one of those ads. Lots of kids with white teeth and giant shoulder pads.
Sadly, that, like the product itself, will have been little seen south of the border.
Can't shake it, can't fake it. Feeling you get from a Coca-Cola. You can't beat the feeling.
Please lie flat on the ground.
Oh, I do love the spring. All the leaves, colours.
It's October.
I thought you said we were coming here for May week.
Well, I can't get everything right.
Oh, I do love the autumn. All the leaves, the colours.
Yes.
Guinness was just getting back on its feet in 1989 after a fairly horrible 80s which saw the company come close to complete collapse, as if Ireland wasn't troubled enough at the time. Advances have been made in technology too, allowing them to approximate a pub-style pint in aluminium. How well or otherwise it actually worked, obviously I can't speak to. The advert combines this information with the well-known fact that it takes for fucking ever to properly pour a pint of the stuff. A full 2 minutes, in fact. Leading this character to miss something very stupid.
Don't believe it.
No, real draft Guinness in a can.
I don't even know where the joke is, really. The other day I saw an old comic strip from the 90s called Bank Manager in the Buff and Simon Bates, the Glam Rock Labrador. And the entire joke was just how arbitrary those elements are put together. I think we're following the same principle here.
So, Mostyn, you've started thinking about getting a mortgage.
Yes, well, actually, I've already got one.
Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie, then a highly popular comedy double act, made several adverts for the Alliance and Leicester Building Society, from the late 80s through to the mid-90s. In fact, I think they only stopped because Fry had his breakdown and ran away to Belgium. This one's from around the middle of their Alliance and Leicester spokesmanship, although the colleagues don't actually appear on screen.
Have you? Bit quick off the mark, aren't we?
Well, at the Alliance of Leicester, you can get your mortgage sorted out before you've even found a house.
Really?
Yes. Saves wasting time once you have found a place. And they can give you 0.5% off your first year's repayments. They'll even give you one of these.
Big Ears goes fishing.
What? Oh, here. It's got everything you need to know about buying a house.
You don't think you're a bit young to start worrying about a mortgage, do you?
Credit where it's due, those are some pretty decent mini-me lookalikes, and fortunately they're also pretty good actors. Doing this sort of lip-sync acting isn't as easy as it looks. You have to match the rhythm and inflection of the voice in the recording, while simultaneously making it seem like you're the one actually thinking and saying these things. That's a tricky ask for some adult actors, so it's particularly impressive coming out of child actors. Although this bit probably wasn't a good idea.
Well, I think there comes a time in a man's life when he has to leave behind his wild, reckless years and face up to his responsibilities like a mature and sensible adult.
Having him move around kind of hauls the fact of the overdubbing into the foreground, if you see what I mean.
Another milkshake?
Don't mind if I do.
Jockey topping?
Ah, no, well, I don't know.
Go on.
Perhaps just a little bit.
That's what I like to hear.
Make your own There Will Be Blood reference to go here.
Get your mortgage before you found your house and be a smarter investor with the Alliance and Leicester.
Well, after all that highly civilised badinage, here's a slap in the face from Murray Walker.
When the line painters from Nuncton and Grimley meet, the race is on!
Some kind of race between line painters. They're challenging styles for running miles.
Grimley are going well, but Nuncton have pulled up. Must be hungry. Yes, there's the delicious pot noodle range.
Well, the race clearly doesn't take place under the auspices of any kind of regulatory authority, because the winning team make absolutely no secret of their use of performance-enhancing substances. Then again, they're only pot noodles. If that's what it takes to win, you probably deserve the trophy for sheer endurance.
Nuncton away again. Grimley blow a turbo. Oh, and that won't please them.
Also starring pot rice, pot spaghetti, which is distinct from pot noodle in that fuck you, and the presumed failure pot chili, with something terrible, I'm sure. You'll notice that pot casserole has long since been given up on, unsurprisingly. Pot noodles were a massive success from the late 80s through to the mid-90s. So much so that they caused the manufacturer's golden wonder to forget the main property of bubbles. By the turn of the century, the fad was pretty much over, leaving the market saturated with pot noodle imitators, so many that the original could barely get a word in edgewise. Golden Wonder duly all but collapsed, selling the pot noodle brand to Unilever, who make it to this day. It did not improve anything. In fact, if anything, it made it worse, because there's been a tendency ever since Unilever took over to sell pot noodles via grimy sexual innuendo, as if they weren't nauseating enough already. Golden Wonder are back in the game now, launching The Nation's Noodle, now known by the explicitly confrontational name of Noodle Pot. Very much the marketing equivalent of Golden Wonder going up to Unilever and saying, "Come at me, bro."
That won't please them.
A chilling warning of zero tolerance for nonconformists. As if we hadn't got the message from Coca-Cola. Polo adverts at this time were usually voiced by the late Peter Sallis.
No other mint is as pure and as clean and as wholly refreshing as Polo.
In his Clegg voice, rather than his more exaggerated Wallace voice, although neither of them were the way he really spoke. Like below in He Wasn't Actually Northern at All. BBC fakery.
Welcome back for the last time this afternoon to the Scott Sport Cup final studio.
And then it's back to the legendary Arthur Mountford for what was actually his last Scottish Cup final before retirement. The efforts largely seem to be aimed at the football-watching crowd, cars, soft drinks, disgusting foodstuffs, and of course alcohol, which they wouldn't actually be allowed to advertise in the afternoon in this day and age, not even during the cup final. Kids could, and almost certainly would, be watching. But back then no one seemed to care. You could advertise Terence Pilsner during a Disney film if you felt like it. Although they very rarely did. There might be advertisers, but they're not complete bastards.